Hello, Feminine Roadmappers. It is Gina here, and I want to thank you for showing up for another episode of Feminine Roadmap Inspires. Today, I am excited to introduce to you this storyteller, Denise Broadwater. She is a debut author of A House with Holes. She's the #1 Kindle book in home, I'm going to get this wrong, home and design renovation. And she is also the #1 hot new release for several weeks. She's currently number 21 in the top 100. And she's going to be sharing her story with us today about a renovation that took her marriage to the brink. So without further ado, I want to thank you, Denise, for coming and sharing your inspiring story today.
I am so glad to be with you. I am excited to begin to share with you a little bit of the background, not as much about the book, but just a little bit about who I am. I am an empty nester, and I blog on emptynestmarriage.com. We are in a time of life that life changed and significantly. So I thought I would start there today.
Yes, I would love to hear a little bit about your background and how that led up to what started your journey to even write this book. So let's talk about Denise and Denise's journey.
Okay, so I am from a subculture in America. Both my parents were born old order Amish, and that's kind of unusual because they're a very small population in the United States, and they were married in the conservative Mennonite church, and that's where I started my journey. But they're farming people, very hardworking, and they call us English because we speak English. So I'm the first generation English from the 1600s, if you can believe that. And a lot of my family are in the Ohio settlement. So that's my cultural background. Just because my parents left doesn't mean they left everything. And that's the environment I grew up in. To this day, I'll tell you one way that it affected me is I cram way more into a 24-hour period than is sanely possible. And you're going to see that in this book. I mean, when I look back that I wrote this book and we were going through all this stuff and I was counseling full time, I right now wonder how I did that. But I'm tired thinking about it. But I raised 3 children, and this is the first time that we've lived inner city. So that's something that is new. I was an elementary teacher and stayed with my children while they were in elementary school and enjoyed, I stayed home about 8 years. And then when my kids started into school, I went to school teaching with them, but I knew that wasn't what I was supposed to do all my life. And at 42, my husband, in support, let me go back to school, get my master's degree in clinical counseling. And that has really been a new calling for me. It's like I found my stride in my 40s. And I love that counseling. I love it to this day. I even told my writing coach, you're never going to get me to stop counseling because that's kind of who I am. And with the storytelling part, I'm a keeper of stories. People come in and they tell me their stories. That's really what I do, is listening. So, and I'm a talker, so listening is tough sometimes.
You picked a career that would challenge you, huh?
Yes. Listening is a very selfless occupation, and when you're outgoing, you have to exercise a new muscle. And so, that became part of this journey. About 5 years ago, I knew that I was supposed to write my mother's life. That book is right now titled Amish Woman in an English World. It's not been published. But I just started, when I called her, I'd say, Mom, start from the beginning of what you remember, and let's start getting your story down. And so I did that, and I did that for 4 years. Over the course of this house, I just began to write a number of her stories. So that's how I kind of got my start in writing.
That'll be an interesting book too, to hear all about that, because it is a very different way of living, but it's still a way that some people do live in America, correct?
Exactly. It is, it's got its own things about it. And, I honestly am glad that we're no longer Amish. I want amenities. It can be very hard on the ladies. Things that we take for granted, electric washers and dishwashers and microwaves. Those are things that the Amish don't have. And they can 1,000 jars a summer to provide for their families. And so it's a lot of work on the ladies. But with that, they are tough women. I come from a line of some pretty strong ladies, even Amish. They are administrators. And my mother, when she left, she became the administrator of a residential care facility in South Carolina, taking care of up to 38 residents at a time. And because of her Amish background, I grew up with that business since the age of 19. She was just perfectly made to take care of other people. She was a great cook. She kept a clean house, and she learned that trade. She had a ninth grade education, and she was just honored in our state as being a matriarch in that business. It was before they required a great deal of education to become an administrator. So, that's going to be part of this book, is how her journey came to that, and her life, and how I'm intertwined with that. Because it wasn't all good. Some of her Amish ways made her naive and caused us, problems in the marriage that she then chose. So
Yeah.
her naivete, and then her unwillingness to leave a bad situation because of that commitment, because divorce is so sadly frowned upon,
Yes.
much like the Catholic Church. So it's a great story. It sits in the wings from my current book. So I thought I'd share that with you now. If you can see
Yeah.
this, House with Holes, One Marriage Journey. And this door is not our house door, okay? But it is a Charleston looking door. So they put that on the book, but it's got significance because we had a brick come through our window at a Christmas season, and that's how my book starts. It kind of gives this inner city picture of what it was like. And, we're not inner city people, so we weren't used to that. We were safe, and we were, fortunate that it went as well as it did. But this book is a great picture of just hard work and tenacity and commitment. A House with Holes. I thought too that my children, they were adults, and they didn't come visit us a lot during this 5 years, and we went there more because of the mess. And if our children had been younger, we would not have taken on this project.
So now, what was this project? You had lived somewhere else and you bought a home in Charleston. Is that how it went?
Yes, we lived in Chapin, South Carolina, on the lake up there. That's where we finished raising our children, and they were at home. And then we moved to Charleston. My husband took a position with an architect locally. He has more of a building science background. He's not a licensed architect, but he does their quality control. And he is a professional in the building trade. And so he took on this house then that we found, a small cottage. And he said, we kind of were looking in this area. So this was the up and coming area. Things were moving this way, but at 10 years ago, this wasn't the best side of town. So the west side of Charleston is growing. Many of the restaurants are coming this way. And we got in early because we had a limited budget. We had to pay cash for the house. And so our budget was limited. And Greg, his skills make him able to handle foundational problems, which we encountered all of that, but also gave him a desire to restore it. We call it a respectful renovation. So it isn't that we're taking everything back, but we are keeping good the things that are found. We try to keep some of the notoriety of the house. The fireplace, we kept it and restored it, things like that. So the 2 rooms, and we got the historic foundation involved, but just more to tell us what to do. So my mother's story, I want to tell you a little bit about my journey to come to writing. So I've had two occupations. I was an elementary teacher besides the major one, which is stay-at-home mom. As long as my kids were out of school, I tried to be there for them. And then elementary teaching, and then counseling. And then I got into this writing part, wanting to write my mom's story. I have a sister who is published as well, an older sister who writes. Her name is Rosie Dow. If you go online, she still has books out there. She does more ghostwriting now than she does publishing her own stories. But I knew that gave me kind of hope that I could do it. There are a lot of people out here that, think, oh, I'd like to write a book, but it's so hard. And she her success helped me believe that I could.
Mm-hmm.
So that's big in dreaming a dream, that you can believe you can do it.
Yeah.
Right? So that's huge. And so my daughter married, was a graduate of Clemson, go Tigers, in the South here. They've been doing very well, but she went to Clemson. She's a chemical engineer. She is absolutely not like me at all. She's more like my husband. But she decided she wanted to go to Portland, Oregon. That's the up and coming place for young people. And so she wanted to move out to Portland, and she got hired by a company, Georgia Pacific, out in Portland. Of course, for us in South Carolina, that seemed like a world away. I had never been east of the Mississippi. I've been from Key West to Maine and Vermont, but I had never really gone west. So this gave us reason to visit her. And she moved out to actually Longview, Washington, across from Astoria area, which is where her plant was. Okay, so that took them out there. But this intersects with me in a very special way. So we go out in 2016 to visit her. And I have one friend in Portland. She and I used to share kids together. I'd babysit for her, she'd babysit for me, and we remained pretty good friends 18 years ago. Okay, so I haven't seen her for 18 years, and we'd spend a weekend in Bend, Oregon together, which, if you know Bend, it's beautiful.
Yes.
I will tell you, I went up there's a Pisgah Peak, or a peak there that's like 7,900 feet above. We don't have anything, by the way, in the South like that. That is high. And so when we first started up that mountain, it was wide and there were trees. And then we get around those curves, and what happens? The trees drop off and the road narrows. In fact, it is so narrow that in the passenger seat, I can't see over. And I have a panic attack. I tell my husband, he says, Denise, we're fine. I can see. He said, and I definitely can't turn around right now. So we got to the top of that. That was my first West Coast experience. And I survived.
It can be terrifying even for those of us who are used to it. When you're on a narrow mountain road and there's nowhere to go but up, it's scary because your car is on the edge of a precipice.
And there's no fence, It's not like there's a guardrail.
That's so funny. I don't think about that. I've grown up in California, so I've been in hundreds and hundreds of mountain roads. But yeah, it's so true because, you go somewhere and they're like, they call their hills mountains, and you're like, this isn't a mountain.
Yeah, we're a third of that, or 3,000 feet at the most.
Yeah.
So to see the tree line drop, and then this is another cool thing. We got to the top there, and of course we took pictures next to 7,948 square, up and all that. But we look across at the mountain. There's a beautiful volcano pond there, Crater Lake, and next to it is a tent on the very pinnacle of one of those points. And I said, what person pitched that tent? And hopefully they don't wake up and forget, and whoop. So that was just a lesson for me, but what a beautiful place. And in Oregon, the other thing that's so cool is you go from red dirt and red to just mountains. And then of course you've got the skiing areas and the peaks out there. The Cascade Mountain range is just amazing. So all of that was great. We spent the weekend, but this is where the story gets fun. So My friend, first name is Annie. I told her, I'm writing this book about my mom's life. And she said, Denise, I teach a professional editor's children. And I'm not going to guarantee that he's going to ever look at it, but I've got his email. I mean, we can try. And so I did. I sent my most harrowing chapter of that book to him. And he picked it up in the next month. And he began to work with me as a coach. So he basically just coached me through, but that helped my writing, because that was in 2016. So that's been a few years. I really didn't know what I was doing. And so that was like an education for me. And if my daughter hadn't moved to Portland and my one friend had not been out there, I would have never got that email. And getting to these people is difficult. You have to hear by word of mouth, and it's tough. And so, and while that book is no longer, it's not published yet, it has led me to work on this work then as my first work. And I hope to get that one out. But I believe in this. It takes a little measure of some intersections that have to happen.
Okay, so let's talk about A House with Holes. What led you to get the house and write the book? So what is that journey?
Okay, so the house that we finally then decided on, and I go into that pretty length at the beginning of the book. I was writing morning pages in my journey of writing. I began to just write about things. And some of them began to involve the book. And someone said to me, who wouldn't want to know about a Charleston renovation? And as I did these morning pages, every morning getting up and writing 1,000 words, I realized my life was about the journey here. And so I began to slowly put that together as a story. And I consider myself a memoirist, which is about my life. Just as I'm sitting here and talking to you about my life, I want to write about, and it isn't to elevate me, but as a counselor, it is to align with people and help them understand themselves better because of my own walk. Yeah. And so there was a statement that Greg made, and it's key to the book. It's in some of the initial things. And he said, Denise, if you're with me, there's nothing in this house that cannot be fixed. And I thought, how perfect is that for marriage? It takes both of us pulling together. And, as I sit with marriage clients, sometimes I have one that's really trying and one that's already out and they're done. And it takes both of us pulling and committed to working on things together and some flexibility to stay connected.
Yeah.
And in this empty nest time, Greg and I pick this time when everything's already in a state of flux to do this stressful renovation. And I want to tell you, we're not perfect people. And so some of the story is about the stressful things that pushed us to the brink at times. And it was our foundation of deep respect that even makes it that today we are committed still together. You know what else? I never take for granted where we sit as a couple. I sit with lots of people 30 and 40 years in, and they never thought they'd be in my office. So, we have to be working on it continually and both working together to make that work.
Yeah. So let's talk about the renovation. How did you come about this house, and what kind of work did you have to do?
So initially, we knew that the side looked like there was a roof leak. I call that the creepy wing in the book. And it had a lot of leaks, and that was where the bathroom was. And so we needed the bathroom to stay intact. It was the only one in the house. So we literally duct taped and bleached that. So we were able to use it. It was like camping out though. We went in there with flip-flops. It was in bad shape. And it was probably the hardest part of living here. So that stayed like that while we got the center area, my kitchen, living room, and half bath finished. And so we had to stay in the creepy wing. And I had my sink plumbed right into the back of that bathroom. Greg put a laundry sink out there, again, like camping. And we would go, and then we lived in the front room of the house. We painted that, and while he opened the back up and got the foundation and the ground secured, we lived in the front room, and that had a door on it. The house was locked, and while it was open, it wasn't open to the outside. It was places we were removing the floor and doing the foundation. So we had to do the foundation work first. And then I compare that to the foundation in a relationship. And foundation is so important. If we have lots of cracks and breakups in our foundation, then the hope of the marriage is it's much harder to build on
Right.
that.
And it's going to be shaky.
It's going to be shaky, a lot of trust issues.
Mm-hmm.
We have to work through those and get those I believe we can build back trust, but it takes time, and we have to both be brutally honest and willing to work on those things.
And it takes two, definitely takes two to go there.
And I talk about holes. The title is A House with Holes. And in there, I talk about marriage holes. You know, we all have marriage holes. Nobody is perfect in this. And so it's about looking at those holes and being able to understand each other's, you know, messiness and weirdness. I see these signs often with these young people today that say, I love you and you're weird, and you love me and my weird. And at the wedding, they'll have those signs, and I'm like, you know what, there's a lot of truth to that.
Honesty in advertising.
Right? And so I don't know that we were always like that when we were getting married, you know, that we were a lot more idealistic.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Now, tell me a little bit about how this renovation kind of impacted or paralleled the journey you were taking in your marriage.
So as empty nesters, we had to get used to each other again. And Greg and I encourage play. And Greg and I are not players. So we met in Florida, and Greg is of Amish descent, as I am. And we had to check to be sure we weren't related, because it's such a closed community. But because we are such driven workers, that also is so much a part of this. Instead of playing together, we enjoy projects. And this is the ultimate project for us. Even though it was difficult, there are many people out here that would rather hike. And I get that. You know what I mean? Like, let's be hikers. Let's refurnish furniture. Let's save rescue pets. You know, that would be another one. So people that have a common area where they can do something together, I feel gives us a place to connect. And so ours is this house. I was asked once if I have construction ability. Absolutely not. I do not have any construction ability. In fact, Greg has said to me, Denise, could you run the miter saw? And after about 2 boards, he was afraid that I would be without fingers and said, no,
never mind.
No more miter sawing. So I am his cleanup, and I bring him things and help that way. And I know the language. I have a blog, believe it or not, that's just on the renovation. And in his architect firm, someone said, wow, Denise knows so much of this language. It has nothing to do with what I can do. I just have lived around the language so many years.
Paying attention.
Yes, I've just paid attention. I know, for instance, we talk about repointing a fireplace. That's a term for a fireplace. I know that, but I could never do that or help him with that. Yeah. So you just get that straight now. I'm the cleanup crew, and I am coming alongside, but I am not the one to be in here doing other than that. So that's just the way we are. But I stick in here with him, and you know, just having me there, I do what I can, and so that we do that together. So that's about this project, this ultimate project that we've taken on, and that we have for many. You know, this is 5 years of weekends. The other thing that we have tried to do is not let the project overrun our life. Our daughter has gotten married before she moved to Portland. She got married. We stopped for 6 months. Our budget, I told her, our heating and air budget went to a venue, and all the things that we were doing, we had to stop for 6 months to pay for a wedding. And we didn't want her to suffer because we chose to do this project. So we've tried to not let it run our lives, but with that, it has prolonged the finishing of it. And so that, is part of this. So, the other thing that's been the main rub between us is Greg is a perfectionist. So put that in a construction setting. And he's good at what he does because he is, but it takes a little longer. And he doesn't trust other people to come in and do the job. So that's in the book, that's major because, when you think about a house, what do? You hire a crew to come in and sheetrock. No. To floor or frame. No, that's not the way this was run. This was all done by my husband's hand because of his workman craftsmanship. And I get it. But when you've lived with dust, and you're going to see this, women reading this book right now, and they're like, Denise, I cannot believe you did this. And it's waiting.
It didn't kill anybody in the process, right?
Right. It didn't kill anybody in the process. That's it. But I did share some fights that we had, major things where I tried to drive home what I needed. But I want to give him this. It toured just a year ago. It came time to do our fireplace, and we were watching an episode of This Old House on PBS. I don't know if you've seen that. It's been around for years, but Greg respects the craftsmanship on that program, so he normally does watch that. And so the fireplace was done in a house in Charleston on This Old House by the Building School of Arts down in downtown Charleston. And so I said to him, Greg, let's get that school to come in, the professor, and do our fireplace. And he really thought long and hard about it because he could do the fireplace. He let me do it. And so we hired them. They came in, and just a week and a half, it was finished. All that dust was a mess, but in a week and a half, it was over. Instead of 3 months.
It's a moral victory right there.
I'm telling you. And he said, Denise, you've been so great to let me work on these projects. Let's do the fireplace. And it's become fun because they did it. And a mason intern who was learning worked under the professor, and it's a 1929 fireplace. And so that was fun, for us to be able to have that done here.
Now, is in your area is there a historical society that kind of dictates what you can and cannot do in the renovations?
So we are north of Line Street, and Line Street, if you go toward Broad, which is what people mainly see when they come in to see the old houses in the downtown, that is highly, every decision, the paint color, everything is monitored, and even the level of the house. Now, we have that too, but they're not quite as strict over here. What we had to do was we had to submit our plans. We had to give the exterior. They didn't care as much about our paint color as long as it wasn't outlandish. And we used weatherboard, which is a historic Charleston color. We were trying to stay within historic limits. My husband does work for an architect, so he does understand some of those limitations, that we need to be respectful of that. But they had to approve. It took us 9 months to get our permit. So think about that. A lot of you pull a permit in a week, but in Charleston, that took 9 months because they are investigating. There were a lot of little things that said we would have to jack the house up, and on this side, depending, and we felt we didn't have to end up doing that because of some rules. And so, and they approved our plans, and they have, what else I want to say about Charleston? I know it's strict, and they are tough, and we had to remove a deck out back. They didn't approve that. We had to remove that. That was a disappointment to us, but they have been awesome. They have given us 5 years to finish this house and have been so generous with our permit. They are so thankful to see it restored. And so as hard as the permit was to get, they've been great to work with as far as giving us extended time and appreciating what we've done. I feel like it's just been a lot of good respect there as far as my husband's abilities. Even the inspectors have been great to us, and it is a treasure now that we are getting closer to having it finished. We are on the other side. I still don't have flooring in the main area. We're putting that in the next 2 weeks. We are painting. The ceiling is now painted. I mean, the outside is getting painted. I had somebody from Texas come to Charleston, drive by the house and take a picture and say, the house with holes. And you know what? We've really been working on making sure that outside gets done, because when you come by, we want to kind of see it done,
Yeah.
especially because the book is drawing people to it. So it's pretty neat to see that happening. So.
And you found that this renovation kind of built your marriage as well?
It did. I mean, I believe we had strong foundation. We had some rocky roads in there. You're going to see that. I was pretty vulnerable in the book. And it is, if you just wanted to read it for the story, it's a marriage memoir. It's just a good story about the house. But in construction breaks, I've put those principles. So about 2 a chapter. You can go back and look and see how those may apply to you. I couldn't help but stick a little self-help into the book because of my background.
Yes.
I thought, you know what? Yes. And you know what? It's easy for me to sit on my side of the couch. So I actually had to think about, what I would tell a client in my own situation. What would I tell a client? How would I counsel me in the setting? And that's harder to do. So I think it brings an element to the book that's fun. And so it's a marriage memoir, and you should get just a good story out of some of the excitement. There's a we had a near fire. There's a chapter called Murder Before Breakfast. The Charleston Nine were taken while we lived here, and that's an afterword I speak about. The Charleston Church Massacre, just briefly at the end. That happened just a mile from our house. So,
oh my goodness,
time that happened, that was a tragedy for all of us. And Charleston really came together during that time. So there's a lot. There's places that are going to make you feel sad, but there's a lot of fun and laughter parts as well.
What made you choose Charleston specifically?
Charleston, my husband works here, but it's a great city. It has wonderful feeling of almost like New Orleans, where it has great restaurants, a lot of good history. It was one of the southern towns that didn't get burned when Sherman came through and burned a lot of Atlanta. And so our houses survived, and many on the other side of Line Street are from 1600s all the way through the 1800s.
Wow.
So we had some of the oldest, wealthiest homes. At one time, it was one of the wealthiest cities in America during the 1700s. A lot of the merchants that brought in ships from England docked here. And so the houses are amazing. Our little house is a model of the Charleston single house downtown. It was a rental for those that served in the downtown, but it has a piazza. If you've been to Charleston, it has a wonderful wrought iron courtyard, and that speaks of the Charleston culture. There's a lot of great wrought iron by Philip Simmons on that side of town. And so knowing all those things helped us in choosing this and wanting to be have a little bit of history in the downtown. Ours was in the late 20s built. It's only been owned by 3 families, and we're the 3rd. Isn't that amazing?
That is amazing.
The Moultrie family owned this since the 1940s, and the daughter came into our closing on a walker. And she had lived in Philadelphia most of her life, but her father owned this home, and she came all the way from Philadelphia as an elderly lady to sign the papers. So that was neat. And we actually have an M that was on their awnings that we're going to be posting on our porch in honor of the Moultrie family who owned this for many, many years. So
they owned it the bulk of the time then.
Yes, they did. And he is still listed Eugene Moultrie as the owner when you go into the tax records. That eventually that'll switch over to us, but so we don't know a lot about them. In fact, if anybody knows, that would be something I could appeal to. Say, if you know Eugene Moultrie on Congress Street, you have information or pictures even of the house back then, that would be awesome. We'd love to have some of those.
The history of that.
Yes.
How have you enjoyed this whole journey? Looking back now, you have this Amish upbringing, you have this story of your mother, you have this great foundation and your husband's commitment to you and your commitment to him. You've raised your children. Now you're sitting in this house.
Yeah.
As you're looking back, what are the treasures that you're really gleaning from that view backwards?
Backwards, yeah. I'll tell you, we would not want to do this again to this degree. We've aged. Now we're mid to late 50s. My husband's 57, I'm 56. Our energy level has declined. So I was glad that we did it and that we own this now. And I want this house to give back. So I want this to be a place where people can visit and enjoy. The hospitality of the Amish is great. If you stopped and wanted a meal, they would give you one. I want this to be that kind of hub. And I think that, to me, Greg and I feeling like we have accomplished something that we can use to share is huge with us. We are closer and better friends than we've ever been. He has been very vulnerable to let me share about our marriage in this book. And I want to commend Greg for that. He's a quiet man. He is never going to want to be on this program with me. But he is so great to let me do what I do. And he has always believed in my dreams. And I think this was his and my dream together. And to see that come to fruition is such a wonderful thing. And to preserve some Charleston history. We had to cut a root at the front corner of our house. It came from an old crepe myrtle. Crepe myrtles are built throughout our city, are planted. They're really big here, and they're great flowering trees. But the crepe myrtle root had grown under the sidewalk and actually uprooted a corner of this house. And I remember seeing it. It was huge. It was a huge root. And Greg had to get down and cut the root back and relay that part of the foundation. And I was on the phone with my father-in-law, and I said, Dad, what about that root? Want to come back? He said, Denise, are you going to be here for 80 years when the root comes back? Because it took that long to get in there. And he said, it took at least 40 years. I think the tree's at least 40 years old. He goes, are you still going to be around? He goes, because that house is going to be okay for a long time. And that's why I tell you that, because we have saved something that is going to have be here for a long, long time, for a family that's going to enjoy it in the future when the time comes that we sell this and we are no longer here, or our children aren't here. So that brings a lot of good feeling. And it is sweat equity for us, but it's more than that. So, and then this book makes it, memorable. So if people know the journey, it's been preserved. A book doesn't go away. So when somebody wanted to look it up, they could and learn about it. So
there's a history of the renovation.
Yes. I want to speak about our community just for a minute. I'm not sure how much time we have, but our community has really come together. We have people that live here that were renters of this house for a number, grew up here as renters in the 70s, played marbles in our front yard, and we have found 1960 and 1970 marbles in our front yard that they used to shoot marbles. Mm-hmm. And people that have come back in their 60s and say, I grew up here. And I was like, wow, I mean, it's just been amazing. So that to me is fun. And they were thinking, what are you going to do to the house? Because it's been here for so long. But they have really appreciated Greg and all that he has done to save it. And it's bigger and better. It's back, as it would have been, and yet better.
Mm-hmm. So what's next? What's next on your journey then, Denise?
I am so busy promoting this book. I have taken a leave of absence from my practice for a time. And then I want to, first of the year, Begin Again in Marriage Work. And so this book is in a marriage, and I'm probably going to be restricting my practice more to marriage, less time per week. And then I want to finish my mother's story. So, but the promotion of A House with Holes has really taken a lot of my time, and I'm glad because I need to give it the time it's due. So once that's done, I want to work on Amish Woman in an English World. I'm not sure that the title will stay, but if you keep up with Denise Broadwater, you should be able to find the next title if you'd like to read it as well. So,
okay. So where can people connect with you and your book?
So I am on Facebook, Denise Mast Broadwater, author. I also have a Denise Mast Broadwater page. And so you can come and like that and follow me there. I have a lot of my current information going on to my author page on Facebook. I'm on Instagram and Twitter as well. Then I also have denisebroadwater.com. So I want you to be sure to go there. Every month, I'm going to be giving away either this book to one of my email list or a current book that I am reading. And I'm going to do a monthly newsletter. I don't really want to inundate my readers with a lot of things, but I want to keep them up on maybe some current things that I'm learning and doing, and then also offer a book or offer something that I'm reading that would be of interest. So I'd like to do that on my newsletter. So please sign up for that. That's one way you can really keep up with me. My book's available on Amazon, of course. We mentioned that. Kindle. I'm at the first of the year hoping to have an audible version of the book come out. So if you're an Audible person, first of the year, look for the Audible version of that.
Oh, fantastic.
Yes, because there's so many people. My daughter only listens to Audible. So Audible books. So I need to be sure to get that in that.
Are you reading it yourself?
But what is that? The book?
Are you the author reading it?
Or no. I'm not. I am choosing that now. A couple of different ones. So I decided against it because of the amount of professionalism that it takes. I am actually a speaker trained. When I was younger, but I haven't used that skill a lot. I was a drama minor in college and did a lot of speaking, but I'm not, so skilled in it that I would want better quality for my book. So I'm going to get it professional. But I do see that a lot where the authors are reading it. Maybe next one. Maybe Amish Woman in English World.
Telling your mother's story in your own voice would be pretty amazing.
It would. And she is, she's been a gift. She is aging now. She's 78 years old. I'm so thankful. Listen, I want to encourage you, if you need to get your parents' story down and they still have good memory, do that while there's time. I really believe in that now, that I'm glad I started in her early 70s to get her stories. It's pretty amazing. And I would have lost so much.
Yeah. So. Well, Denise, I want to thank you so much for joining me today, for sharing your life, your story, your background with us. It's been an inspirational and enjoyable time together. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Gina. Appreciate the time. And I look forward to meeting your listeners and knowing my readers. So please get in hold of me.
Absolutely. So for those of you watching and listening, take Denise's advice and talk to those people in your family who have a story that needs to be told, even if it's just told within your family. There's something about knowing your history that is so powerful, right?
It is. It's awesome.
So don't forget to subscribe down below. I will have links to everything Denise so that you can just kind of go down at the bottom, click through, get your copy of the book. If you're in the Charleston area, swing by and check it out. So again, I want to thank you all for joining us for Feminine Roadmap Inspires today. We are so grateful that you spend time with us. And Denise, you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you.